recording. Thank you everyone for participating on our second session of Transition to Elementary. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions during the workshop, please use the chat to answer your questions, and at the end, RP will address them. I hope everyone can hear and see us well. I think we don't have any problems of connection. So if you have any problems, please send to us through the chat too. And in the chat, I'm gonna make available for you Google Forms where you have to confirm your attendance and also give us your feedback about the session today in order to receive your certificate. Okay, so I think we are good to go. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, can you put on the next slide there, Bia?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I hope you're ready for me to talk at you for another hour or so. I'm really worried about the format of this, but it can't be helped. So I repeat my apology. I'm the Associate Academic Director for Maple Bear Brazil, and I feel like I should be modeling good teaching, so forgive. We're going to continue today. I spent all of the time yesterday talking about teaching and learning because I think that is the most crucial thing that you as school leaders need to be watching and supporting and learning about. So today we're going to do domains 2, 3, 4, 5. So bear with me. I'll try not to rush too much. And if you have a question, please do ask. I'm happy to try my best to answer them. So the second domain is what you as school leaders have to do to provide supports for all that good teaching and learning. Next slide, Bia. So human resources. You need to look at your human resources as the wisest investment that your owners and you as leaders can make in the school, because the school is about people. There's no other resource that's more important than the people, because Maple Bear is, a student-centered pedagogy that requires excellent relationships between the kids and the staff. And I'm not just talking about teachers either. I'm talking about your teacher assistants. I'm talking about your support staff, your custodians, your security guards. Everybody has to have strong relationships. And I do see that. It's one of the most beautiful things that I see when I visit Maple Bear schools. A friendly greeting by the security guards starts you off well, and then the ladies at reception are pleasant, and all of those things are so important to Maple Bear. So your teachers obviously need to love children, and they have to have a professional growth mindset. So when you're interviewing potential candidates for a teaching position in your elementary school, you need to ask questions that will get at that. You need to ask them about what's something recent that they've learned that they want to apply in their teaching. Ask them what they know about student-centered pedagogy. You need to support teachers in order to do a good job. And one of the things that I really have to mention, and I want you to put it in your notes, is that the maximum class size for Maple Bear is 25. But that's not the optimum. That's the maximum. So, if you end up with 28 students for year one, you need to make that 2 classes of 14. And I know that costs extra money, and that it's tempting to say, well, 28 is not that much more than 25. But I can tell you that with elementary students who are larger and have more needs in terms of academic subject areas, then you're shortchanging them if you make the class huge. And almost always you're going to end up with behavior management problems. So really good idea to make the classes less than 25. I would also say, and again, I understand the economics of the thing, but having a teacher teach only one grade So I've been to many schools where a teacher will teach an elementary class, a year one class, and then she'll also teach a year two class in the afternoon or something. And that's really, really tough. And I know that sometimes teachers will say, I can do it. I want to do it. I really need the money or whatever. If you're going to have her teach two classes, it should be two of the same grade at least. It's really difficult to form those strong relationships and do all the planning for two different grades. And, one of the important things that teachers in Maple Bear have to do is to connect with the families. And if you've got, 20 kids in one class and 20 kids in another, having 40 families to try to, bond with is very difficult. So I'm just throwing that out there. Specialist teachers, like your music teachers, your phys ed teachers, they need to know Maple Bear pedagogy too. And when I've been training in schools, I've talked to phys ed teachers, for example, when I see them have kids line up and one child at a time does the activity, like they make a little obstacle course and one child at a time and the rest are standing in line. I taught phys ed and I tell them what I tell any teacher: you need to have the kids active, all of them, not just one at a time. And so we figure out a way to do centers in phys ed. Music isn't so much an issue because most of the time all the kids are involved, but we need to have those teachers attend training too. Often we do training and those teachers are not invited or expected to be there. And I think it really helps the whole learning environment of the school if everybody understands what Maple Bear's about. Your support staff are essential. And I know that in early years, there's so much support in the classrooms. You have lots of adults, and that's as it should be. It doesn't automatically change when kids enter elementary. There's still a need for teacher assistants, and I would encourage you to invest in that. A teacher who's by herself, is much more stressed and doesn't have the extra set of eyes and hands to make sure that the centers are running appropriately and that classroom management is taken care of. So I really encourage you to ensure that classes have at least a TA to help the teacher. If you have special needs children in a class, it's even more important. If you've got a child, and remember, we talked about this in the Q&A yesterday about children who can't sit still. It's really nice if you have a TA who can say, let's go for a walk. We're going to go and check on the class garden, or we're going to go and look for bugs or whatever. It's really nice to have that second adult. I know this is a challenge, but you try to hire bilingual for everything. And if you don't have a pool of candidates with English, then invest in some training for them. It's really nice if your TAs and even your custodians can speak a little bit of English to keep that immersion milieu going. We want you to encourage training for all staff for as much as possible and appreciate the staff. They do a very difficult job. And the more you can do as leaders to show appreciation, to help them work together, to give them time to collaborate and to appreciate each other and to share their good ideas with each other, the better your school is going to be. Next slide there, Bianca. So professional resources and training for your staff. Here's some things that you need to consider. All of your teachers should have access to the intranet. And I know that in some schools this does not happen. And I don't understand how the poor teachers can make their lesson plans appropriate to Maple Bear if they haven't got full access to the intranet. It's really nice if a teacher can see the extra resources, not just the unit plans. There's a lot of resources in the intranet, and I know that it's in the process of being reloaded and improved, which is great. And I hope that you as leaders will encourage your staff to explore the intranet and look at the extra support documents. When you get new staff, you should have an orientation process and mentorship in place. In other words, you match up the teacher with immediate training so that they know what's expected of a Maple Bear teacher, and have them pair up with a teacher who's an expert, even if it's not the same grade, and have them observe and have them share their concerns. Sometimes they won't want to come to the coordinator or the director of the school and say, oh God, I'm really struggling. I don't understand what a class agreement is, and I don't understand how I can manage my centers. But if they know there's somebody on staff who's their buddy, they can go to that person and say, could you help me? And it's a great thing to do. If you can organize your schedule so that people that are teaching the same grade have time to work together to collaborate in their planning, just think of how much better the lessons are going to be, and how you're going to reduce the workload for each teacher. One teacher can say, well, I'll get all the lesson plan templates filled in for Unit 1, and then we'll talk about it and add ideas. And somebody else can be responsible for Unit 2. So when they finish Unit 1, Unit 2 is already, pretty well ready to go. And it's really helpful if you can make that time available. A professional library. There are many books that are recommended in the Maple Bear intranet that will support teachers about how to do guided reading, how math is taught in a student-centered way, and that kind of thing. And here's another one that's really important. I know everything's important. Invest in Maple Bear training. I know that it seems expensive, but it's money well spent. The teachers that go to central training really learn from the best. Those trainers that do central training are experts, and they really help teachers to dig deep into the program and understand the foundation of Maple Bear, and some really practical tips on how to do a better job of whatever the topic is. And they can come back and they can help you with your professional development as a school. You don't have to send everybody every year, but I think it's really great when the people that do go come back, and then you give them an opportunity to teach their colleagues. It doesn't always have to be the coordinator that is in charge of professional growth. It's wonderful when teachers have been to central training and they share what they've learned. The other thing is in-school training, and I know there's going to be some virtual in-school training, and that's excellent. And it's really important that you encourage and expect your teachers to participate when an in-school trainer is collaborating with your school. When they're actually in the school, it's excellent if you make them a schedule and you make sure that your teachers understand that this is not a negative experience to have an in-school trainer attend their class and observe and scribble notes. It's a wonderful opportunity for them to learn. And I've found that Maple Bear Brazil teachers are so open to in-school training. So I'm not going to go on and on about this, but for new teachers, it might be a bit scary. So your job as a leader is to reassure them and explain that it's all very constructive. Nobody's going to be telling them they're awful people. They're going to be saying, try this. And I noticed that this was not working too well. Let's try something different tomorrow. Next slide, please, Bia. One of the trainings that is not negotiable is special needs training. Special need training 1 and special needs training 2. Training 1 is the introduction, and I think that every school coordinator should be involved in that, because you can then go back and introduce it to your staff. And every school is going to have special needs kids. And I have to tell you that it's very difficult, challenging, but rewarding to have those kids integrated in your school. And you probably already know that from your experience with early years. As soon as we get into elementary and there's more academic demands, sometimes those special needs kids need even more support. So we want them integrated, though. And we had to learn this in Canada too. Pulling out those kids and putting them in a little room with a school psychologist or a special resource teacher is not really the optimum way to help them learn. You can pull them out once in a while for a check-in or a special kind of activity that they need, but generally those kids need to be in the regular classroom with their classmates. And we as teachers need to learn how to make that work. So the special needs training is really important. The plans that you'll learn how to make will work for every kid, not just the special needs kids. That's what's so wonderful. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about kids with ADHD and how they need movement breaks and they need, to have things that engage them. Well, that's true for everybody. And so I think that you'll find that training is really useful for every teacher and for you as school leaders. One of the things that you'll be doing is a class profile for each class. And I did these with my staff when I was a principal, and it was one of the best meetings that we would have. I would sit down with the teacher and she or he would tell me, what the social emotional profile of the class was and what the academic profile was. And we would see, where the hot spots were. And that really helped the teacher and me make a good plan for that class. And each class is different. So the special needs training will help you with that. Next slide, please, Bia. So another thing is the learning environments. Early years classrooms are so beautiful. And we want elementary classrooms to be beautiful too. We want them to be literacy rich in both languages. And here's something that you need to be aware of as a leader. Sometimes, you don't have a lot of wall space in a classroom, but you need to make it shared equitably between the Portuguese and the English literacy programs, and other subject areas need space too. So that's something that you should have your teaching team work on together. How are we going to split up the wall space and make sure that it's agreeable to everybody? The Maple Bear book list is a long one, but it's non-negotiable. You really can't teach reading and writing if you don't have the books. And I know that they're expensive and sometimes they're hard to get, but Maple Bear Central can help you if you're having trouble. Literacy Place in year one and onwards, the reading series that we use for guided reading is non-negotiable. It's the foundation of the elementary literacy program, so you need to have it. And if you haven't already ordered it, you better see what you can do. More books is better. So the more books you can get, the better. And sometimes when trainers arrive at schools and see that the classrooms don't have enough books, they're going to give you a hard time about it. One of the things you can do is ask parents of older grades, or you don't have older grades, but sometimes parents have English books at home that they're willing to share. There's ways of getting a bigger selection. Math and science textbooks. I think I mentioned already that we're not sure about the math book being an actual textbook or whether it's going to be an ebook, but those are, again, integrated into the lessons that your teachers are expected to deliver. So you really need to have those. And you need still to have the lovely stuff for centers. the boxes full of manipulatives and the boxes with science materials and the play kitchen, the blocks. You still need those things. Puzzles, games. So I know that I'm adding up to your shopping list, but it's really important. Maple Bear is a stimulating environment, and we can't have empty bookshelves and kids, learning to read without any books to get them excited about it. Next slide, please, Bianca. All right, have a look at these two pictures, and I think I can make my point here. Classroom B. The classroom A is the one on the left. It's a Maple Bear classroom, and classroom B is ugly. And I wanted to show you that because sometimes having a negative example is more instructive than having a positive example. So there's a few things that I want to point out in the Maple Bear classroom. You can see that there's space on the bulletin boards for math and science and literacy activities, and they're at eye level for the kids. These are elementary kids. They have bigger desks and chairs, which is a good option if you don't want to have tables, but they have to be able to be, reconfigured and moved around. So you have to decide which way you want to go. I was in a K-9 school when I retired, and in my last few years at the school, one of the things I did was to buy tables and get rid of all the desks, all the way up to grade 9. And the teachers in the middle years were a little worried about that at first, but when they saw the elementary grades and how cool it was and how nice it was and how flexible it was, they decided they wanted tables too. I didn't force them to have them, but it's something to consider. Classroom B is really awful. That is like the opposite of what we want to see in a Maple Bear classroom. There's nothing on the walls. It's sterile looking. The kids are all doing the same task, and nobody's talking to anybody. And some people who are old school might say, wow, look at those kids, they're learning. And I say that's one of the ugliest classrooms I've ever seen. Next slide, please, Bia. So furniture and equipment. I put the name, I searched and searched and searched in the old intranet, and I could not find the list of furniture. And then I stumbled on it. The title was in Portuguese, and it was in the wrong folder. So these things happen. But there is a list with photographs, and it's really helpful to know exactly what size chairs. And they're going to get bigger as you move up into the higher elementary grades. And I've already mentioned a guided reading table, I think is really an important thing for every classroom. You need at least a computer and a projector in every classroom in order to do the kinds of activities that we want you to do. And more is better. If you can have iPads, even if they're shared, it's a really good thing. A carpeted area, and it doesn't have to be huge. I think sometimes the tables and chairs are squished together because there's a huge carpet area. And to me, the carpet area is something that should be used less than the tables and chairs. So it could be smaller. And you know what? Sometimes elementary kids even appreciate having, a small carpet area and some chairs around the outside of the carpet area when it's time for a circle, because some kids behave better when they're sitting in a chair. There's no law that says they have to sit on the floor. And there's no law that says they have to be crisscross applesauce. They're getting older. If I asked you to sit for an hour or, even 20 minutes cross-legged, I think you would complain. So think about that and be creative about how you set up your classrooms for elementary kids. You need storage. You need lots of storage because the SLMs are, they're bulky, and you want to have also kids' journals and their science books and whatever else is useful to them in a way that they can access them quickly and get them when they need them. So you need lots of storage and a classroom library with the nice shelves so the books can be seen. And one of the things I tell classroom teachers, if I walk in a room and the classroom library is a mess and the books are all over the place, that's a great job for a kid. And there's a great job for a kid with ADHD who needs to get up all the time. Give them a job. Say, okay, you need to move around. Could you go and straighten out the classroom library? Put the books right way up and into the slots. Give the kids some responsibility for that. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a wish list. These are not, possible in every school. But since you're just entering the elementary phase, and hopefully you're going to be able to allocate some more space as your school grows, think about a space for a school library instead of just, books in a classroom library. As your school gets bigger, it would be really nice to have a library with somebody there to sign out books and make sure that you keep track of them so that they don't disappear. It's a wonderful thing. I've seen it in quite a few schools, and I'm just throwing it out there because I think that you're in the stage where you're planning and thinking about the future. So let's think about some of these things. And you can see the one in the picture is not really a fancy setup. And you can start like that, start small. But having a place for kids and teachers to borrow books that they can't keep in their classroom all the time is lovely. And there's another place your ADHD kid can go. Could you go to the library and get me this book? Or could you go and straighten out the books in the library? It's nice to have a music room, which is, soundproofed as much as possible. I know that in early years, generally the kids have music in the classroom, and you can carry on with that. But if you have space, your music teacher would probably love to have a place to store the instruments and the noisemakers that are going to be so much fun for the kids to use. Gymnasium and equipment for elementary activities. Elementary phys ed is more focused on low organized games because the elementary kids like a little competition and they like to have rules and they like to argue about rules. So the phys ed teacher would probably like to have a space to store the equipment, and your gym doesn't have to be indoors. It can be outdoors with a cover, and it just needs to be bigger and safer than you're probably using for your little guys. Another great thing, if you can, and again, this is not required, but a science lab and or an art room. Sometimes the science lab and art room could be the same room. It's just nice to have a sink, a big sink that you can put your messy stuff in, big tables that you can use the science equipment a little bit more easily on, rather than the small tables in the classrooms. All right, next slide. All right, we're switching over to management and leadership. This is something that the quality assurance reviewer is gonna ask you about, and I'm sure that because you're attending this training and you're preparing well, you're gonna all of these things I'm gonna mention are gonna resonate with you. So next slide, please, Bia. Okay, this one, the quality assurance person is gonna be really a stickler about this. They're gonna ask you to show them your timetable, and then they're gonna criticize it if it doesn't match up with what is required. So you wanna pay close attention here. All elementary and middle years classes require 5 hours of instruction, which is split 50-50 Portuguese and English. And all of the breaks, like the recess and snack breaks, are outside of the 5 hours. So if you take a half hour for snack break, then your kids are at school for 5 hours of instruction, plus half an hour for snack, plus whatever else you add on. An elementary teacher needs a continuous teaching block for English language arts, math, and science. Immersion requires that English subjects be scheduled in the English time block and Portuguese subjects scheduled in the Portuguese time block. We don't want kids going from an English class to then a Portuguese geography class, then back to math in English, and then over to history in Portuguese. No, 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 no. So this is, of course, challenging for you. And one of the things that I did when I was a principal, I guess I abdicated responsibility. I was terrible at doing timetables. It just wasn't in my skill set. So I would get a couple of my teachers who were really, they would always come to me. The first time I tried to do a timetable, these 2 or 3 teachers would come to me and say, Arpy, come on. And then they would make suggestions to make it better. So then after that, I learned, and I said, okay, you 3, I'm giving you an afternoon. You go somewhere and you make a schedule, a draft, and then we'll, look at it and tweak it together. So I'm just throwing that out there too as an idea. If that's not one of your strengths, find somebody who has that kind of logical mind. Next slide, please, Bia. So here's the details. And I made this slide because if you want to go back and look at it, it's there in writing. And I'm going to show you another slide with this too. 2.5 hours of English block scheduled, 350 minutes of ELA, 7 50-minute periods. So some days you're going to have 100 minutes of ELA. And of course, that's a great time to integrate things like computational thinking or character education. You've got a long period, you can, integrate other subjects. Math, 5 50-minute periods, science, 50 minutes 2 times a week. And then Portuguese, language arts, 400 minutes, history, 100 minutes, geography, 100 minutes. Phys ed, now hear this, 100 minutes. You can do 50 minutes 2 times a week, or in my humble opinion, better yet, is to divide it into 4 times a week, 25 minutes. Like I said to you, I taught phys ed, and for little guys, and these are still only 6 years old, 50 minutes of uninterrupted phys ed running around crazy activity is probably too much for them. But I leave that in your capable hands. I know that sometimes it just has to be that way. And the phys ed teacher is going to have to be creative about how to keep kids engaged and not fainting on them with 50 minutes of phys ed. But it's just, I wanted to throw that idea to you that it doesn't have to be block scheduled for phys ed. And same with music. It can be divided into shorter periods. And sometimes that helps you to keep your phys ed teacher occupied in a more sensible way, rather than just coming in 2 days a week, for example, which I've seen some schools do. And then their timetable's messed up because the phys ed teacher's schedule is running everybody else's schedule, and it should be the other way around. Okay. Next one, Bia, please. Okay, so there it is. There's a little table there for you with the subject areas and the mandatory time per week. So you can look at that and make sure that you have that. And the quality assurance person is going to look at your timetable and add up the minutes, literally. And if you try to sneak something in like a robotics class into science class, the reviewer is going to say, no, that's robotics, that's not science. And I'm going to talk about that later. Next slide, please, Bia. So managing the requirements, avoid the challenges, scheduling the specialist classes so they don't interrupt block scheduling. That's a hard one. Scheduling teachers who teach more than one class. And, if you have 2 grade 1 classes, let's say, and you have one English teacher and one Portuguese teacher, that works lovely. You can block A is English for the teacher, and then block B is English in the other class. But you make sure they're not scurrying back and forth. Scheduling teachers who teach more than one grade makes it even more difficult. So I'm really strongly recommending you don't do that. Scheduling non-Maple Bear extras has to be done outside of class time. And I'm not saying don't do them. Many schools have invested in robotics or a maker lab, or Lego has a program. It's, I understand why schools want to do that, but make sure that you're not inserting it into the academic time. It has to be extra. And I've seen schools where, all of a sudden these little kids are dressed up in their ballet or their judo outfits in the middle of the morning. And I'm saying, where are they going? Well, the only time the ballet teacher and the judo teacher can come is at 10:30. I say, well, to them, I would say, well, then you need to get a different ballet teacher and a different judo teacher, because you cannot insert those extras into the academic time. It's just ass backwards. Okay. Next slide, please, Bia. Okay, this is a heavy one. And you're experienced with report cards, but they get a little bit more complicated in elementary because you're assigning letter and maybe number grades to kids. And that is a scary thing. I always talk to teachers about evaluation, and they say, oh, it's the worst. And it is, because it's so easy to damage a kid when you do a report card. It's so easy. And sometimes teachers get really stressed and they want to put stuff in the report card because they're angry. The kid's been giving them a hard time or whatever. But your job as a school leader is to make sure that that doesn't happen. We want teachers to be honest, but we don't want them to be hurtful. So there's an art to writing report cards and to making sure that kids do well as they can before the report card grade is calculated. The time to make sure a kid is doing well is before you figure out their mark. That's the thing that the teachers have to understand. If there's a kid who's struggling and the teacher says, oh my God, when I add up what I've got for him, it's going to be like a really bad D. Then I would say to that teacher, well, you need to figure out a way to spend some time with that group of kids, or those two kids that are really struggling, and help them before you give them a D. And I'm not saying that it's forbidden to give a kid a D, but I'm just saying that it really should be rare that a child gets a really bad mark, unless they've been away, and even then you would put not applicable. It's a legal document, so we can't just guess. And this is one of the things that was covered by the trainers who've been working with teachers on virtual teaching. The teachers, one of the things they keep asking is, how am I going to assess the kid? How am I going to come up with a report card? And the answer is, you cannot make up a mark out of things that you haven't actually seen the child do. And you may not be giving a traditional report card if you haven't been able to connect with that child. And you can't give them a failing grade just because their parents haven't been able to, ensure that they do the virtual learning. That's not fair. So it's really tough at this point. But let's talk about the Shangri-La when everybody's back to school and we're doing things normally. There's 2 elementary report cards templates available, one for 3-term and one for 4-term. So you can choose the one that you're going to be doing. Next one, Pia. Comments. I'm telling you all this because you need to help your teachers understand this and make sure that they're doing it this way. Comments should be personalized. So the teacher shouldn't have, 2 or 3 comments and just plug the same ones into everybody's report card. And I'm sure you can guess why. If you've ever had a parent phone and say, I was on WhatsApp and we all looked at our kids' report cards and that teacher gave the same comment for every kid. Wow, that is not a good situation. It's unprofessional, really, to have the same comment when you've got 15 or 20 kids. They can't all be doing the same in exactly the same way. So they need to be personalized, specific to each student's achievement and learning behaviors. The parent needs to know that the teacher knows their child. Comments should include strengths. You always start with strengths, areas that they can work on, and next steps. And the next step is never something like, if Pedro would pay more attention, he would do better in math. That's not a next step. The next step is Pedro is having trouble, skip counting. So the next step would be for him to practice at home 5 minutes per night with you. That's the next step. You need language that's parent-friendly, respectful, and has constructive information. And it's never, I taught this, and this. Oh, good for you. What did the student learn? You never have a report card that just lists what the units are. You can have a report card that talks about the outcomes and what the child did in regard to those outcomes. So you don't just say, I taught magnetism in science, or we did magnetism. Well, what did the child learn about magnetism? And what does he not quite get yet? So your job is to really, really help teachers understand the difference between those constructive report cards and negative ones. Next slide, please, Bia. Your role. You have to review every report card. And this was one of my least favorite, but most important jobs. And like I said, teachers get stressed and they sometimes sort of lose their perspective in a way. And your job is to help them get it back. So you need to ask them to have their report cards into you early so that you can review them. I was called the grammar policewoman because I feel that they should be grammatically perfect. And if they weren't, I would either fix it myself, which is not the best thing, but if you're in a hurry, or I would, send it back to the teacher with my suggestions. And that is your job, to make sure that report cards are never ugly and they're never a surprise, with failing grades. It's too late once they've gone home. The damage will be done. So it's one of the main causes of conflict with parents, especially elementary, because in early years, the teachers are generally just talking about growth and the milestones. But as soon as you start getting into academics, parents get uptight because they care and they don't want their child to fail. So we need to be sensitive about what we put in the report cards that will help them understand where their child is and what we're going to do to help them do even better. All right, next slide. So office procedures, I'm not even sure if this is still the case because I haven't been in the office for a long time, and maybe Bia can clarify at some point, but generally it's a computer system procedure, and you've probably already done early years report cards. So it's just a matter of doing the top part of the report card with a picture and their attendance data. And once you transfer them into the PDF format, though, they go out and they're done. We can't make any more changes. So just another be careful message. All right, next one, Bia. All right, staffing considerations. One of the things that you have as a responsibility is to make good hires, and also to make sure that you have enough staff to do the things that Maple Bear wants you to do. And so here are some things. I strongly recommend an interview template. And if you don't know what questions are good ones to ask, we can help you. I've actually participated in quite a number of interviews, and it's always nice to have at least two people in the room with the candidate, so you can compare notes afterwards. Your hires should be, the template. The reason you want a template is so that you can ask the same questions of every candidate and compare their answers. So somebody has to write down what they say so that you can say, oh yeah, that person had a really good grasp of student-centered pedagogy. The other one, not so much. Your hires obviously need to be fluent in English. And you know what? They're going to have a Brazilian accent, 99% of them, and that's fine. It's of course normal, and your kids are going to have a Brazilian accent because you live in Brazil. So don't worry about that. It's the fluency and the vocabulary that we need. Your hires should know Maple Bear pedagogy or be ready to embrace it. And the best candidates will have looked up Maple Bear on the internet and found out some things about it and be ready for your questions. Hire TAs and support their growth into the role of teachers. Some of the most talented teachers that I've seen in Maple Bear schools tell me, oh yeah, I started off 3 or 4 years ago as a TA, and I worked in 2 or 3 different classrooms, and I really picked up a lot. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing well. And I agree with them that people who have had a chance to learn Maple Bear by watching it in action are generally really smooth in their transition into becoming classroom teachers. It's nice to have male and female teachers. It's really great, especially in elementary and up, to have role models for the boys. It's not as common as we would like to see, but if you can find some balance between male and female, that's awesome. And again, I'm saying avoid assigning 2 grades to a teacher if you possibly can. And I know that sometimes things are unavoidable. Next slide there, Bianca. Once you have your staff, that's not the end of your responsibility. You have to make sure that they're functioning well and that they are doing what we need them to do. So one of the tasks that you have is to observe and assess your teachers, give them constructive feedback, and help them to grow. You want to make sure that they're actually doing the Maple Bear curriculum. So the coordinators need to be working with the teaching teams and look at their lesson plans and help them. If they just have a list of textbook questions and activities and no centers, then as the coordinator or director of the school, you need to say, let's see how we can insert some engagement into these lessons. You go back to the Maple Bear unit and find those activities that involve student conversation and student collaboration, and let's include those. That's your job. You don't just look at them and say, yep, done, check, done. How good are they? That's important. And when you're wandering around and visiting classrooms, you can also get a good handle on whether the classroom needs anything, or if it's sort of messy and maybe you need to help the teacher help the kids be more responsible. If they eat their snacks in the classroom and it's like they've had a food fight in there, that's not okay. And the teacher can't just say, well, the kids can't just say, well, the cleaners will take care of it. No, the kids have to start in elementary school being much more mature and responsible. So when you're visiting classrooms and you see something that you don't like, you need to have a quiet word with the teacher and ask her to have a word with her students. One of the things that you have to do is to write down your observations. And if you're doing formal evaluations of the teacher, you need to make sure that you date it and get it signed, which I'm going to talk about next. Next slide, please. So there's a couple of ways you can assess your teachers. One I sort of talked about, where you just walk through and say hello. And it's really wonderful because the kids get to know you and you get to know the names. And you can have chats with the kids. You can sit down at a center and see what the kids are doing. It doesn't have to be, sitting quietly at the back of the room and just writing notes. You can get a feel for the class by participating and asking questions. So you don't have to be in there for long. If you've got a lot of work to do, just make sure that you get into the classrooms regularly. Other things that you have to do are called formal evaluations, and you have to do those, it says 2 or 3 times a year as needed. I don't think you have to do every teacher twice a year, but you do have some teachers maybe that are struggling, and you've tried your best and they're still struggling. You need to have formal evaluations where you've done a formal meeting before you go into the classroom and a formal meeting after you've been into the classroom, and that you discuss the things that need to be fixed. And if they aren't fixed, you need to go back and have more meetings. And all of these have to be dated and signed, because if you're going to not hire the teacher back, or you're going to terminate the teacher, then it's important that you have documented evidence of why. Next slide, please, Bia. There's an example of a schedule. It allows you to target your support. So if you know that there's certain teachers that are struggling, you're going to be in their classrooms more often. And if you have master teachers, you should go in there just to get inspired. And if you see somebody that is doing just a super fantastic job and you have a struggling teacher, why not say, I'm going to sit in the struggling teacher's classroom and give her or him a half hour to go and watch the master teacher work for half an hour and just get some, positive ideas without me having to, try to explain it. They can just go and see what I'm talking about. All right, next slide. School improvement plan. This is something that the quality assurance person is going to talk to you about. It's part of the quality assurance form now, and they're going to ask you ahead of time to come up with some goals. And I know that it's a new process for a lot of people to have a school improvement plan with SMART goals, but it's really much better than just saying, oh, we need to work on our behavior management. That's way too general, and it's not going to get done if it's that nebulous. So a school improvement plan is something that Maple Bear is really reinforcing, not just through quality assurance, but through the trainers. So when you have in-school trainers, we want you to be able to say to them, we've got this school improvement plan. We have these 3 big goals. So when you are here working with the staff, we'd like you to really focus on doing some training regarding guided reading and using math manipulatives and how to integrate character education into our classes. Those 3 things. So you need to have a roadmap because a goal without a plan is just a wish. So you're going to have support as you try to develop what we call SMART goals. And maybe some of you have done this already. Maybe you're ahead of the game here. But if this is news to you, then this is something that a trainer can really help you with. Because in Canada, we had school improvement plans expected by the provincial government. We had to hand them in every year. Every school had to have one, and we had to have them approved. And so we had to learn how to do them. So any Maple Bear trainer can really help you with this. Next slide there, Bia. So you're going to look at what the QA reviewer has identified as some things that you need to work on. You're going to evaluate as a staff. You as school leaders are going to notice things that you think you need to pick up on. And then you're going to create your SMART goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. And I'm not going to go on and on about this because I think that's another whole topic. But I just want you to start thinking about what kinds of things you're going to make your priorities. And when you're just entering elementary school as a school that has only had early years up to now, I would say your school improvement plan would probably have a lot of focus on maybe elementary type things like guided reading or, something that's going to help you develop a really top-notch elementary school. All right, carry on. Next slide. So what you can do to support your school improvement plan is to share it. Every time you talk about teaching and learning with your staff, the school plan should be guiding you. Talk to your staff about why you have a school plan. It's not just because Maple Bear told you had to. It's because you want to be better. You don't want to stand still. Make sure that your staff, as much as possible, accepts the goals. If you come up with a goal and they don't buy it, it ain't going to happen. So you need to build that relationship with your staff and that team feeling that we're all responsible for our school's success. The phys ed teacher can do literacy activities. I've seen it, where the kids run around and they have to grab letter tiles and they have a race to form words. There's a million things that every teacher can do to support goals. You want to create a sense of urgency. And again, if you think it's important and you can get your staff to realize it's important, that you don't expect them to focus on 25 different things, you have 3 important things to focus on, then that's a really sort of comforting structure for people. And we want to have you as the coach. And a coach doesn't just say, good job. A coach says, try it this way, or let's add this strategy. It's about pressure, good pressure, and support. You set the direction, you keep everyone on course, and you give people time to work on things, because you can't expect them to do it, at night when they're trying to, get home and have a meal and interact with their own families. We have to have school time for this. So instead of having a staff meeting that's just a whole bunch of administrivia, why not send an email to the staff with all the administrivia and use your staff meeting time for school plan action plans? You can have teachers get together and plan what they're going to do to address their goals. All right, next there, Bia. Maple Bear policies. You are responsible to ensure that your staff in your elementary school follow Maple Bear policies. And these, when they're called policies, they're not negotiable. Homework. You need to review the homework policy with elementary teachers, because sometimes, like I said before, elementary teachers think, oh, time to get serious. Let's start sending a blizzard of worksheets home, or let's send every SLM we can find home to be done. No, the Maple Bear homework policy is based on research, and I could spend an hour talking about the research. And there's so many misconceptions about homework. And I guarantee that your parents have all of those misconceptions. They think, a lot of them think anyway, that a good school gives lots of homework. And that is the opposite of the truth. And good schools teach well during the school day, and they send minimal homework. It's called home reading and a few little interactive activities. There's no independent learning work sent home until year 5 in Maple Bear. And an independent learning work means a worksheet or textbook questions, because a student should not have to battle with their parents when they get home about how to do math the Maple Bear way, when the parent wants to do it the 20-year ago Brazilian way. So we're not doing that. We take responsibility for teaching the kids, and we ask the parents to support us and to make sure their kids read and maybe play some interactive games or do a card game with high frequency words. That's about it. The use of technology in the classroom, we can't live in the dark ages. We know that technology is the way these kids are raised now. So we have to be responsible for doing it in an enlightened and constructive way. We want kids to use technology, but we want them to do it safely, and we want them to do it actively. We don't want them sitting there like little zombies watching movies. And I know as early years teachers or leaders of early years schools, you probably had teachers who thought it was okay to stick a video on when they were tired of chasing the toddlers around, but it's not okay. It's not a passive thing, and we want to use it for learning. In elementary school, the older they get, the more things they get into, and they know technology. So you are advised to have what we called an acceptable use policy, and we have the parents sign it and we have the kids sign it. I agree that I'm going to do this, 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 and I'm not going to do this, this, this. And if I do, there's going to be consequences. We had to block kids out of using our computer labs in middle years because some of them were doing things that were just completely inappropriate. So we'd say, well, 1 week with no technology because you are not handling it right, and we're going to teach you how to handle it right. So just think about that. In elementary school, screen time is 1 hour per day max, and that's for the whole teaching staff. So if somebody shows something for half an hour, that leaves a half an hour for other people. There's a policy about after school programs. You have to get them approved. And that's to make sure that they're coherent with Maple Bear pedagogy. So it's just a little form that you fill out, and most things are quite acceptable, but you have to let Maple Bear know that you're doing them. All right, next slide. Create your yearly schedule to support learning. That sounds obvious, but I've been in Brazilian schools, and I know you guys have lots of holidays, and that's wonderful. But you don't want to make a whole bunch of extra holidays by scheduling special events that are kind of frivolous. And I'm not trying to be the anti-fun person. I want you to have a spirit day or a pajama day or whatever, but you can't have a whole bunch of those that interrupt or that go back to back. You have pajama day, and then you have your Terry Fox run, and then you have a holiday. You're interrupting learning for 3 days in a row, and then you have to get the kids back into that frame of mind. So I'm just saying, be careful. One of my pet examples is your birthday party policies. I've been in schools where like every day there's some fancy cake coming down the hall and the parents are shooing the kids out so they can decorate the classroom. To me, that is just a waste of time. Birthday parties, if you have one a month, everybody that has a birthday in April is going to have snack day with cake. So those are the kinds of things you need to think about so that you're not finding your teacher saying, when do I have time to actually teach? There's no time to do any lessons. You want to choose special events that showcase what we do. So having a science display where the kids show how they made periscopes in class and show parents what they can do with their garden, whatever. Really try to focus on things that will impress parents with the learning. Choose environmental initiatives because elementary kids want to be helpful. So why not give them a chance to be in charge of recycling or to have a garden or to raise money for Terry Fox. So give them challenges, and this coordinates with your character education course. All right, next slide. Health and safety. All right. This is a popular topic right now. You're going to be getting a whole bunch of information and support documents from Maple Bear about the protocols for your safe return to school. And obviously, you're going to want to follow them. You want the parents to feel that their kids are safe. There's Maple Bear plans, and you need to be, as the school leader, the person who makes sure that all the supplies that you need are there, and that your cleaning staff knows what they need to do, that your security people know the new normal for kids coming and going from school. And you also need to be the reassuring presence in the school that helps your teachers stay calm and deal with the million new issues that are going to come up. So you have to model being empathetic, flexible, and creative with your staff, with the kids, and with families. So I wish you good luck with that. I know it's going to be hard, but you can do it. Next slide. I'm sure you already have these things, but you may want to tweak and add some things that relate to elementary in your school-wide behavior plan, your parent and staff handbooks, your emergency plan, your anti-bullying plan, your policy for social media use. And I really jump on that one a little bit, because if you don't have a policy, you should have one. You should make one. And my recommendation is to make sure that your staff don't get sucked into the vortex of what's up with classroom parent groups, because I think that can be really hurtful, damaging, inappropriate. So just think about it, and talk to your staff about it. They might be relieved if you tell them they're not allowed to be in WhatsApp groups, because if they have a child in a Maple Bear classroom and they're a parent, but they may not be comfortable with some of the things that are said on WhatsApp, and here they are, a staff member and a parent, and it's conflicting priorities there. So help them out. You need to have a food safety plan and maintenance plans. Obviously, you must have a list about, yay long of the things that you have to be responsible for. But elementary adds to the list, I'm afraid. Next slide, Bia. Okay, we're coming to the thrilling conclusion. Community and families. And we started with relationships, and we're going to end with relationships. So next slide, Bia. Family relationships are so important. If you spend your whole day dealing with unhappy parents, there's something wrong. If you have nurtured those relationships. And I know some people are impossible and you're never going to please everybody, but you really need to try to get the parents to understand that you are a team and that you are working with the staff to make their kids' lives wonderful. Elementary students need to feel that too. If they think that you and their parents are on different wavelengths, they're going to take advantage of that in a negative way. They're going to go home and complain to their parents. If the teacher tells them they have to work and they don't want to work, they can go home and say, oh, the teacher was mean to me. If you've got a trusting relationship with the parents, they're going to phone you and say, is my child having a problem in class because he keeps saying that the teacher's mean to him? Can you just check that out? Rather than saying, I'm getting a lawyer and you're going to be sorry. So being proactive and building that trust and that community is really important. Kids who know that their parents and their teachers are a team are feeling safer, and they know that they need to do what the adults agree they need to do. Your year one students, the kids that are in kindergarten right now, senior kindergarten, they're probably worried about year one. Maybe their parents have said, boy, no more fun anymore. You're going into elementary. You better, be ready for tests and things. We don't want to scare them. Your job is to reassure them that year one is going to be great. And you can do that by talking to them about it. And we used to have what we called a bump up. A bump up was an afternoon where the kids in kindergarten went to visit the year one teacher and the classroom. And they got to talk to the teacher, and the teacher would tell them what wonderful things they were going to do next year when they came to year one. And that was really lovely. And if you can manage that, it's a wonderful thing to do. They might have questions and the teacher can answer them. Happy children will settle in quickly and learn better. All right, next slide. Positive parent involvement. So you might want to have a similar transition meeting or a bump up meeting for the parents where you explain the realities of Maple Bear Elementary and ask them not to try to scare their kids and reassure them that the elementary program is wonderful, the pedagogy is wonderful, and explain to them anything that might be a concern, like homework. And, if they start asking you questions, you don't avoid them, you answer them and you tell them why Maple Bear has this policy. Have a communication protocol that supports mutual respect and constructive problem solving. With some parents, you may have to, tell them that you're going to give them 24 hours to cool off and then you'll have a meeting. If they arrive at the school and they're irate and they want to yell at somebody, you can have in your policy that parents have to phone and make an appointment if they want to have a meeting with you. And that's just respectful anyway. And your time is important. Some schools I know have an afternoon that is, that's the day. That afternoon is when I am going to ask my receptionist to make appointments with parents, and no other times. I mean, sometimes you have to, break that rule, but generally you have so many other things to do. You don't want to have parent meetings every day at different times and then try to manage all those other things on your list. So just think about it. The more you invite parents to excellent activities where they get to see their kids in action, the more they're going to understand what we're doing and what Maple Bear is all about. So if your teachers are doing something really awesome, a really great science experiment that worked out so wonderfully, maybe suggest to the teacher to invite parents in and have the kids explain what they did. It might only take half an hour. And maybe every parent can't come, but the more parents get in to see the great things you do, the better. Okay, next slide. We're almost there. Don't forget to celebrate. this is I'm trying to end on a high here because I've just given you a list of all these things that you have to do. But don't forget to take joy in the wonderful work that you're doing, because you are. I always say when I come home from a Maple Bear training session, wow, those Maple Bear schools are more Canadian than Canadian schools. And, you should take pride in how warm and friendly and supportive your schools are. So have assemblies where you talk to the kids about positives. Tell them that you're proud of them, and have your elementary classes maybe even present to the younger ones at an assembly, when they've done something really super. Newsletters where you send home something positive about what a class has done with pictures. Awesome. Showcase the children's work in common areas where the parents will see them when they come to the school. And have lots of community outreach and charity work. And here's where you can invite parents to take a role. Instead of your teachers being responsible for every single special event, why not ask for a committee of parents to help with your Terry Fox run? And having that committee of parents work with a few of your teachers will give them something positive to put their energies into, and make them spread the word to other parents about how awesome it is to work with Maple Bear staff. And aren't we proud of what our kids do? And the last thing is to appreciate your staff. If you're having a staff meeting and your staff is staying after 6 o'clock and they've put in a full day already, spend a little money, get some pizza, get some cookies, get coffee. You want to tell your staff that you understand that they're going above and beyond what other teachers are expected to do. Maple Bear teachers are special, so give them some love. And then look how happy everybody will be. And on that note, I am going to stop talking. I am very sorry that I kept you this long, but if you have any questions, you can fire them at me. And, if you ever need anything, Maple Bear Central, we're there for you. There's a lot of great people who are connected by email, and we have regular meetings, and we can plan something if you need it.
So thank you everyone for participating. If you have any questions, please use the chat or even open your mic to talk directly with RP. We are available right now to answer all your doubts.
They're probably sweating and going,
yes.
Oh my God.
One quick thing. I gave you a link here on the chat, so you can confirm your attendance and also give your feedback about the workshop. We are going to use this information to create your certificate, so do not forget to fill out all your information here on the link that I sent to you all in the chat. Okay, all the files used here on the workshop is also available in a Google Drive folder. The link is also in the chat, together with the YouTube playlist, where I'm gonna make available these recordings.
I really encourage you to look at that list of resources and go to the Vimeo training videos that Maple Bear Global made, because a lot of them are going to be really useful to you when you're training your staff. There's 3, I think, on guided reading, for example, and it's nice to see Maple Bear teachers and children as the example. So I encourage you to have a look there.
Well, I just want to thank you for a very helpful, practical body of information. It's really very clear what we have to do. It's a lot of work. It's very complex, especially when assessment kicks in. but it was really practical, really useful advice about what we'll have to do for year one. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I encourage you to trust your staff and ask them to participate in a lot of these responsibilities that you have. The more they participate, the more they understand, and the more they are empowered. And that's what a good leader does, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You create the next set of leaders. And the more you involve the staff, the more leadership they're going to accept.
That's right. I was really pleased to hear you say how TAs should be hired with a view to becoming teachers, because I think this is what really makes a difference at the end.
Yes.
That you have people with a growth mindset, and that
Right.
will make all the difference.
Yeah, because you can't expect to find the ideal candidate right off the bat. There's a lot of young people that have some, pedagogical training, but they're not necessarily quite ready to be a Maple Bear teacher yet, but they've got all the makings. So if you hire them and give them a variety of experiences in your Maple Bear school, they're gonna learn, they're gonna shine.
Yeah, and they're gonna want to stay with us.
Yes, and that's the thing.
Opportunities to grow and develop as professionals.
Right.
So,
And you that's a hard thing to do sometimes, is to hang on to your staff. But the more they are trusted and like you say, given opportunities, they're going to say, wow, this is a wonderful place to work. I'm staying.
That's right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone who would like to talk with us, please feel free to open your mic.
I think we tired them out.
No.
They've got to go and address their long list of notes.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for participating. Yeah. Please do not forget to confirm your attendance, and feel free to contact the academic team if you have any doubts. If you need some help, please use the services center and open a ticket through the staff, the way that you can use to communicate with us, and send us your doubts there, and we'll be able to help you and to help you any way you need.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to interact with you and in this very unsatisfactory way, and I hope to meet you sometime in your school. Bye-bye.